The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of KSMQ Public Service Media Incorporated or its assigns.
This week on Garden Connections, we're getting our hands dirty. We are preparing the soil so you can have a productive garden. Is your green thumb ready? Stay with us. You're watching Garden Connections. Welcome to Garden Connections. I'm Amy Whitaker. Thank you for joining us. I'm happy to introduce Jim and Cindy, and they are here to help us start a garden. We welcome your participation in preparing for spring planting. Call in and pose your question. So Jim and Cindy, today we are going to talk about getting your soil ready for your garden or your pots wherever you may be starting a garden this year. I see we have got a wide array of different things that could possibly go in your soil. But first I think we need to talk about, what your soil is basically made up of. There's sand, silt, and clay. And then on top of that, you've got your organic matter. So let's start with the sand, silt, and clay. What should we look for in our soil when we're starting?
Are you going to start with the sand? You're closer. Grab the sand, Jim. Get your hands dirty.
Okay. Well, this is sand here, and of course, some areas in town, each area in a city, or any area, it can be totally different. Yeah, one area might have a lot of sand, and the next area, neighbor might have more clay or something. So certainly with sand, lightweight, drains really well. You got to water it a lot, and you got to feed it a lot. And you should add a lot of organic material to it too, of course, so it can sustain life.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to get in a lot of trouble there.
So sandy soil is kind of dry, doesn't hold the water very well, and doesn't hold nutrients very well.
Oh,
One thing too is you can grab your soil and you can squeeze it, and if it holds together, it's just, you can feel it.
You can feel the particles. If you've got a lot of, coarser sand particles in it, then you might be looking at some watering issues.
Yeah, and of course during the summer, it's hard to keep anything alive in sand. You need the organic matter, the compost or the black dirt mixed with it there in combinations to sustain life. Otherwise, it's the only thing that's going to grow in there maybe will be moss roses or succulents that are designed for Arizona climates. So so you want to be so get your sand ready there and add some things to it.
What else have we got here? We've got this pile, and this one you pick it up and you squish it together, but it doesn't really fall apart when you squeeze it. It just keeps reforming. What's that got going on in it?
That's got a lot of clay in it. You can almost make your pot out of there.
And so what would you do with a clay type soil?
Add some sand.
There you go.
Some other lighteners, vermiculite, you could put that in there. Compost, always adding compost.
Compost, peat moss would be really good too, sphagnum peat moss. Because this soil here, even though it looks pretty good now too, you get during the dry season or you get to that summertime, and this can get as hard as a rock.
Yeah. These chunks right here, they won't break down. They will stay like that, and it's like a little cement block. So.
And roots do not like cement blocks. They like to have lots of areas to go to where air can get at them, and the nutrients and the water can get at it. So it's just so important to mix, other additives in that too, to loosen it up, make it rich, make it more productive.
So you want to make sure you've got enough air space to hold water and everything, but not too much air space that it all just flows right through.
Goes right through, yeah, exactly. Yeah, sand again. I mean, you know, some places they grow a lot of, they have a lot of sand, like in Wisconsin, and they grow a lot of potatoes there. But it's irrigation.
They're irrigating.
They're irrigating constantly, and you know, so that's what your trade-off would be if you have sand.
So ideally, kind of a silty soil, which would be kind of a medium, halfway between this and that.
See, something like this where I've just done this, but it just crumbles apart. I mean, it doesn't stay like that little lump over there. And this is what I have in my garden. So this is, you know, been worked on, been having manure added to it, the compost, like the vegetables and the leaves, that all goes back into my garden. And so.
Yeah, and last year, and this stuff here, I mean, this will grow plants.
Yes.
I mean, you'll get tons of tomatoes, tons of peppers. You know, the productivity is just off the charts on soils like that.
You can see there's a lot of organic material in here yet. You know, even though I kind of pulled some things out of there, there's still stuff in there. So it's, you know, good to work with.
Yeah.
What else do you got up here?
Well, this is sort of like my soil at home, you know. Or if anybody's having a new garden, you know, you dig it up and it's in clumps like that. And of course I got some sod in there too, but you know, say you want to start a new garden or an area, you want to have flowers, you know, what do? You know, you dig it up and you got these big clumps like this, and
you're going to want to get that broke up. And for my garden, you know, I'm going to go through there and pull this grass off from there, and I'm going to put that in my compost pile. You know, break it down in small pieces as I can, and break off the dirt. You know, before I throw that in the compost pile, I'm going to try to break this down as much as I can. A lot of clay in this chunk here. This is some good clay right there. That's really,
I think
really
my friends
clay.
and I used to make little turtles out of
Yes.
clay like that as a kid.
Yes.
But anyway, you know, get the grass and the weeds off from that area. And then you want to, you know, you're going to have to amend your soil. You know, you see you've got a problem here. You're going to want to add something to lighten that up, like some sand, the peat moss, even this compost here. You know, that's pretty nice.
If you're looking at starting a garden, how deep do you want to dig it out as far as getting out the roots and stuff of those weeds and the grass?
I think we're talking at least 12 inches. You want to, you know, you want to get a good base there. So, you know, you're taking the sod off first, so you're already dropping that down a couple inches, which is why you want to get the amendments back in there and till it up really good.
Yeah, and you go down 12 inches and amend it with add more compost or sand or sphagnum peat moss, and I mean, you're just gonna, and then mix it up, of course. Get a tiller in there or a shovel and just mix it up. And
but you do want to get it broke down. You don't want these chunks like this, because when it dries out, it will stay like that. And your plants need a lighter soil so it can you know, spread the roots out.
Oftentimes people come in during the summer and they say, oh, my plants aren't doing much, they're just sort of sitting there, it's like they're stunted or something. Well, this is the reason. The majority of times it's
compaction.
Just compaction. The roots can't grow in that during the summer. It gets so hot and dry, you know, and you know, I mean, the roots just can't grow, and if the roots can't grow, the plant's just going to sit there. So
that's one thing too. When you're working in your garden, you want to have specific paths so that you're not walking and compacting your whole garden. Try to keep your paths small. Do the wide row planting rather than little skinny rows, so you can have a wide row of plants and a path, so your garden's not all path.
And this goes for vegetables or flowers, you know. People are just amazed when they do the homework, they do the initial work on their soils in their garden, and it takes an extra hour or two, but the results are just a beautiful garden. And you know, that's the biggest part, I think, of having the neighbors come by and do a wow factor is the soil preparation and getting rid of soils like this, you know, and turning them into soils like this.
So moving on to organic matter, how often should we put it on, and where can we find different kinds of organic matter?
I'll let you talk about the organic matter.
Well, how often do you put it on? Well, in the spring and fall, pretty well. You know, it's sort of up in the air there, I guess, a little bit. But certainly spring is a good time to put down organic matter, compost. You can get it in bags from the garden centers around, and certainly spread it on there. And yeah, I mean, there's different kinds of compost too. Here we got a couple different kinds. We have a this over here is like a 100% cow manure. Okay.
Composted manure.
And it doesn't smell bad. It's pretty sterile, and you can't. Yeah, it's but
It's composted. It's dirt.
Yeah.
It's broken down, so it's not smelly. It's not yucky. It's just very actually nice.
Yeah, and you put an inch or two of that
Oh,
on top of your garden and work it in, every year, and it obviously gives you great results. But
I don't think you can add too much compost.
Want to do it every year because it does continue to break down throughout the year and get used up as well. So it's something that needs to be continually added.
Yeah, and this down here, now this is something new that we've been seeing a little bit around, and it's a cotton burr compost. And of course, why cotton compost? Well, they grow it down south a lot, and they add a lot of nutrients to it to make it productive. And so
Gotta
they
do something with it.
Yeah, they harvest. I mean, they harvest the cotton, and then the plant. They harvest the plant too, then, and put it in piles, shred it up, and it's just a very beneficial compost for soils. And too, it's stronger really than some of the other ones. You hear things like tea. Make your compost tea, and this will make tea. And basically what it means is, you could put that in a pot and pour water over it, and you'd get the brown tea coming out, and
Use that to
liquid
water your
compost.
plants.
yeah, but that's strong though, so you want to read the directions on the bags and use the right amounts.
Well, even with cow manure, it probably isn't the greatest idea to go out to a farmer and say, hey, can I go pick up your cow manure? Because it will burn your plants if you put it on straight. It's, like many other things, you need to make sure that it's already started to be broken down and processed before you
Yeah,
You
put
don't
it on
want
your
fresh.
plants. No.
No fresh.
not in the city, yes.
Might bug your neighbors to
Yes.
boot, right?
Yes.
Okay. Tell about your black one.
Now, what's this guy up here?
Yeah,
It's very
Well, this is a local businessman was in the other day, and he had earthworm castings, right?
Yep.
And of course, that's the waste from earthworms, and he grows earthworms and sells them to local bait shops and things like that, and that's the byproduct. And it's, as you can see, it's very fine and just a great additive to the soil and stuff to loosen it up and keep it rich. So that's really a nice one too.
And I hear not only does that have fertilizer in it, but often it has plant hormones in it that can help with your rooting and your flowering and such. So a lot of times those hormones are lost in a compost pile, but when it goes through the worms as quickly as it does, those hormones are preserved.
Okay.
So they can, aid in the growth of the plants that way as well.
Yeah. Well, and people think, compost, it doesn't have a lot of fertilizer value in it. It's like 111 or 100. So really it's the microbes that do the root action that really, make the roots in the plant do so well. And so too, and that's a whole nother program is to fertilize, of course. A lot of people, don't think they have to. I mean, we put down compost every year. Well,
May not be enough.
Yep.
fertilize every year too, or twice a year.
That's where you come into soil testing. You want to do testing to see where your soil's at nutritionally too. And when you're starting your garden here or getting it tilled up, you do want to do a soil test. So you can check and see where you're sitting on that. The other one too is, I know in Austin there's the Soil and Water, Austin Soil and Water, that does some soil testing, so you might be able to go out there and get it done.
And I know you can send them up to the University of Minnesota Soil Lab as well.
Yeah.
And have it tested up there. And basically what they'll tell you is what the pH of your soil is. And that can be kind of important because if your pH is too high or too low, your plants can't take up the nutrients.
And it says ideally 6.5 to 7, most garden plants like that range. There's some that like it a little more one way, and the other, you know, when you start zeroing in on the plants that you want, you can start checking those out to see where you want to be.
And then you also want to know your nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium levels. And a lot of times, you know, the more organic matter you have, the better you'll come out on those levels. But again, you'll still need to add for that.
Yeah, because if you're high in nitrogen, you might get a lot of greens growing up in your garden.
Big green plants,
Yeah,
no flowers.
no flowers, or maybe low on fruits. So, you know, you get a simple soil test kit and you find out the balance, and you know you can correct it.
And they usually have the little color chart on the back that you've got the better color chart. Good color chart that you match the color with that to see where you're at and you know what you need.
So you can do it by yourself at home, or you can find somebody else to do it for you professionally. Just depends on how comfortable you are. And that's going to tell you a lot about the soil that you have and what needs to be done with
I
it.
think like the U of M also goes into micronutrients. What, you know, there's certain things that nitrogen needs this to really, you know, go with it, and the phosphates need something else to get them going good. I think magnesium is one that's a good one, boron.
Copper, zinc, molybdenum.
They all have their little uses.
So we've kind of talked about garden soils. How about compost? What if you're trying to do some composting of your own at home?
Okay.
I see we've got
Oh yeah,
You got your browns and you got your greens, even though it's yellow. It's greens as in the wet stuff. So your freshly mowed lawn, using those grass clippings, all of your vegetable waste from in the kitchen. You know, put it in a bucket, take it out to your pile.
Yeah, I think we even got eggshells in there too and stuff.
Calcium.
And, you know, the coffee grounds and things like that. And yeah, so it's, you know, and just get your bucket inside your house and, you know, fill it up once a day, go out and empty it. And and there's...
You want to mix it with the browns. So you want to have, what did we say, 2 to 3 parts browns to 1 part of your greens. And the browns also, you can spread your grass clippings out. If you mowed and you left the grass clippings there, got away from you, you have the little furrows, you know. You can go out there when it's dry. The grass clippings can be your brown.
And we just had a question. Coffee grounds is included in your compost, correct? You can do coffee grounds.
It's also good for insect control. Yeah.
Do they not like the smell?
I don't know. There's something about it. A long time ago, Grandma always would, you know, her coffee or coffee grounds she would use on her plants for insect control.
Oh, wow. And eggshells will keep the slugs out. If maybe.
Yes. Yes.
Also adds calcium.
Yes.
Calcium is good.
Calcium, helps with tomatoes and that blossom end rod, doesn't it?
Yep.
They get,
Yep, and I hear the potassium in banana peels around your rose bushes.
Okay.
Put your banana peels around your rose bushes.
Also, the banana peels and any of that can go under your rhubarb leaves, because rhubarb is such a heavy feeder, and it absolutely loves the garden waste.
So there are times when you can just throw that out in your garden and let it decompose on its own, or you can do it in the compost bin. Either way, it's still good to add the organic matter to your garden.
So you do 1 part fresh green and 2 parts brown.
2 to 3 parts on the brown.
And if
Mainly because it's so fluffy.
And if you want to do paper, I mean,
You can do shredded paper for your brown.
that works too then.
Yep.
Yeah.
Most newspapers now are using soy inks, so we can, you know, shred it up. You know, you can use a newspaper for the mulch too, and all you do, you know, if you don't want it blowing around your yard, get it in spot, water it down,
And it'll stay put. You can do sticks, I think. Isn't it as long as they're smaller than your pinky?
That's a good stick. Yep. these guys, they'll break down. You put it in there and, you know, get something. The one thing with the compost is you want to remember to keep mixing it. So that's why you have some that are tumblers. If you don't, you want to get a pitchfork out there and, you know, mix it every once in a while.
Make sure you don't get anything in there that's too big either. Otherwise, it'll take a long time for that particular stuff to break down.
And using a starter too is good with compost.
You can do that.
Like, I mean, I know there's a lot of compost
starter.
makers or
Nitrogen.
Nitrogen?
You know, something with the like the blood meal. Mixing that in there, that helps a little bit.
Keeps the microbes fed as they break everything down.
Okay.
And you can add some soil to it too, because there's lots and lots of microbes in even just a little teaspoon of soil. There's tons of them in there. So if you layer that in, then you've got those little organisms working from all directions within the pile instead of just all having to come up from the bottom.
And what's really cool with composting, of course, is, you know, we throw away so much in fresh produce and fruits and vegetables and coffee grounds and eggshells and paper. You know, if you want to take that next step, shred some paper and put it in your compost pile or use it as a mulch in your garden, and you know, you can really see your garbage, you know, going down every week and using less and less to the landfill.
Would that be considered recycling or reusing? Recycling, probably?
You're actually doing both because you're recycling it back into the garden where it's being reused.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, can we switch gears now to more like potting soil mixes? If we're going to be, instead of putting plants in the ground, if we're going to be doing them more in containers or pots, what are some things we want to look for?
With most containers, you want to find something that's not heavy. You want something light so you'll be able to move it around. You get something like this in your pot and it's not going to go anywhere. So you want to have your lighter mixes. And Jim brought 3 different ones there for us.
All right, we have actually got a caller question. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I have a part of my garden, a large part of my garden. I can't seem to get very much vegetables out of it anymore. I want to know what I can put in there to start getting vegetables out of there again.
Okay. I think it could be that you have kind of depleted the area. If it was really good for a while and then it's kind of, you know, waned off, it may be that you just need to go and add a good dose of some nutrients
manure or
to
something
it.
like that. The compost burr, getting that in there to boost it, and then maybe doing a soil test and see, because you're probably lacking on some of those. The NPK are the big ones. Checking that out, and there's different fertilizers you can get. There's some fertilizers that are good for organic gardening if you want to keep that way, or you've got some just your regular garden fertilizer that you can throw in there to help out too. Also, the compaction. If you've been doing it for a while, you may have been walking over it, and if you don't get it tilled really well, you'll have compaction underneath. So if you're only tilling in the top 6 inches, you know, underneath that might still be compacted, and you'll have to lighten that up too.
Okay, so yeah, go ahead and use your spade to break it all up and make sure that it's good and loose. And then, yeah, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to pick up a soil test just to see where your nutrients are at. And that will tell you, you know, how drastic you're missing and what steps you need to take to add those nutrients back into the soil. Because gardens are hard on the soil.
Yeah, you've got some plants that are pretty heavy feeders, and you know, tomatoes are going to take a lot of things out of your garden, so you want to get that back in there.
Yeah. At least, you know, a couple inches of compost and maybe you know, an inch or so of sphagnum peat moss and
then, or even a slow release garden food.
Yeah.
You can find those in organics or synthetics.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, so back to the soil, or the potting soils.
Yeah. And I guess we have a couple examples up here for, you know, like potting soils and stuff. Or there's one soilless potting mix, and if you see soilless potting mix, that's what it means. There's no dirt in it. It's soilless. There's no no dirt. It's peat moss and maybe bark and some perlite, and it's light.
And vermiculite.
And vermiculite, yeah, it's light. But of course, the advantage to that is that your roots can grow really good, the plants can grow really good, and you know, you can feed it, you know, as much as you want, you know, and really get some beautiful results with that.
The one complaint I have with that is they dry out so fast. Well, anytime you get a hanging basket, it blow dries. So yes, it dries out fast. When you water these, you want to water slowly and get the entire pot so that sphagnum peat moss in there has a chance to absorb water. If they water slowly, you know, maybe do it and go down the line and get all your pots and come back and hit it a second time so that it absorbs the water and it won't dry out so fast. Most people stick the watering can in the top and the water runs out the bottom and they think they're done. Well, they didn't get the sides.
And the last one we've got over there is a potting soil. So that actually has a soil component in it as well. What's the advantage to that?
Well, you know, sometimes you're in a hotter area, you know, or and you don't want it to dry out as fast. A lot of people use that in pots that are maybe, you know, a ways away from the hose that they don't get to very often, you know, so they want to go with a little heavier soil there. Certainly, you know, the cemetery urns, people like to go with that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, a little heavier, but still really nice and light. And there's such a big difference in potting soils too. And that's soil, potting soil. It's, you know, so it's got dirt in it, and it's got sand and other things too. But some potting soils, the quality isn't real good, and some potting soils are just really, really good. So,
If you pick the bag up and it doesn't bend or move, you probably don't want to buy that one.
All right, so find one you like that works for you and stick to it.
Yeah.
All right, and for more information, log on to ksmq.org and click on Garden Connections. You can catch past episodes, join the blogs, and tell us about your garden experiences. Now that your soil is ready for planting, what kind of garden are you planning to plant? Tune in next week when we'll talk about different ideas for the different kinds of gardens. Thank you for joining us. I'm Amy Whitaker. See you next week.